So in this video, we're going to be talking about what I think is a pretty interesting question, and one that you can really mess this one up if you don't understand what the question is really all about. And again, the question has nothing to do with how you answer it. The question is, tell me about a time you had a disagreement with your boss. Okay? So right off the bat, you need to understand that it's one of these negative questions, okay? So you are being fed the opportunity to go negative. In this case, a boss, right? You had a bad boss. Who hasn't had a boss that they, at some point, if you work long enough and enough different jobs, you didn't necessarily like your boss or get along with your boss or thought they weren't that great, okay? So here's your opportunity to respond to that question. And there are massive pitfalls with this question, okay? Let me tell you what this question is not, okay? And I heard somebody recently who should know better, that was training some people, say, well, that's a conflict question, isn't it? No, it is not a conflict question, okay? It is not a conflict question. The word conflict's not in there. The word disagreement is, but not conflict. Okay, if you're in an interview, you're going to get asked a question about conflict. They're pretty much going to say, how do you deal with conflict in the workplace? Or what are your tools for resolving conflict in the workplace? Okay, you don't hear the word conflict in here. It's not a conflict question. Okay, and if you try to describe a conflict with your boss, you are going to get into dangerous territory, no matter how you try to tiptoe around it, okay? My second don't do on this question is don't tell a story that had any conflict in it. Okay, it's not a conflict question, so don't tell a story that had conflict in it. Well, but it's a disagreement, and we'll get to that, okay? It's not a conflict question. A lot of people, I always ask my students this question. I ask them to respond to this question. Tell me about a time you had a disagreement with your boss. And even after talking about the question, what they do is they discuss a difficult time where they had with their boss. And it's clear, even though they are trying to be nice about it, anybody can tell that it was really bad conflict. If in fact you tried to tell a story that had conflict, you and your boss didn't see eye to eye and it got heated, and you try to tell that story without saying we didn't see eye to eye, it got heated, it's going to come across. Anybody that has asked that question enough, been around enough answers on it, they're immediately going to know you're talking about something that was very emotional and very upsetting. And what I like to tell my students is, you are trying to put lipstick on a pig and it's still a pig. It ain't going to work. Okay, so it's not a conflict question, number one. Number two, don't tell a story that has any conflict in it. Number three, on the not, what it's not, or what you don't do, is this is not a story about you being right. What? We had a disagreement with the boss. I have to tell about how the boss was wrong and I saved the day because I was right and I explained it to him, or my idea was right. The boss wanted to do something else. We failed, and he realized my idea was right. That's not a good answer. I'm telling you right now, that's not a good answer. Okay. You being right is not the important part of this question. Okay. So you tell me a story where you were right, the boss was wrong. That's not the important part of this question. It's not what this question is all about, you being right. Okay, think about that. At the end of the story, you tell a story, well, I was right, the boss was wrong. Okay, how did that convince me that I want to hire you? Because you told some story where you were right and somebody else was wrong. At the end of the day, that's what you're doing. You're going to tell me a story where you were right, he was wrong. Probably has nothing to do with anything to do with the job. You're just telling a story. So what if you were right? Why do I need to hire you because you were right in this particular case? So it's not about you being right. And if this isn't obvious so far, let me tell you the fourth thing that you don't do when you answer this question is you do not throw the boss under the bus. Okay, that should be obvious from what I've told you so far. You don't throw the boss under the bus. You don't say, you know, he wanted to do it this way, we did it this way, we failed badly, and he said, you know, yeah, Ed, you were right, we should have done it your way. Or the boss didn't listen to me, I made this recommendation, he told me to pack sand, and we failed. And, you know, obviously if he had listened to me, we wouldn't have had that problem, okay? You make the boss look bad. You don't want to make the boss look bad in this question. Again, what does that, how does that make me want to hire you? Because you were negative about the boss. You told a bad story about your boss. How, again, when I hear that, how is that making me want to hire you? It's not. It's not. You're just telling a story, and it's not making me want to hire you more. Okay? So what do? You're going to tell a positive story. You're going to have people singing Kumbaya at the end of your story. Okay? Everybody is happy. We had the win-win. Okay? The boss is not a bad person. The boss maybe is a complicated person. Maybe there's a lot that the boss has on her plate. Right? But the boss is not a bad person. The boss actually might be a really smart person. You could tell a story where the boss was really smart. You had a disagreement because guess what? You were jacked up. Not the boss, you were jacked up. But the boss handled it in a really impressive manner, okay? You learned something. That's the next thing, okay? So the boss, you could have a disagreement with the boss, and guess what? You might have been the one that was wrong. Nobody ever answers that question like, I was wrong. I disagreed with my boss because I was wrong and they were right. Well, that's a much better way to tell the story, as long as you don't be careful about how badly you were wrong and what you were wrong about. But the idea that the boss knew what they were doing and you learned something is not a bad story. Okay. And the last thing that is great is you can share that you understand the boss's perspective. Okay. An employee that understands the boss's perspective is probably going to be more supportive of the boss and more helpful and more understanding, and can help the rest of the team by explaining, hey, look, this is kind of what the boss is thinking about, you know, and he's got this, that, and the other thing to worry about. So that's kind of their perspective. That's why they might not be agreeing with us, or they might want this thing done a certain way. Having that perspective about the boss is a helpful thing. Okay, so it's not a bad story. The boss wasn't jacked up. It wasn't this horrible conflict that you're going to try to talk about, but not have it sound that bad. Whatever happened wasn't that significant. It didn't result in people being fired or there being epic fail, but you learned, your perspective was good. And the boss was not a bad person. Okay? My story. So I used to send very detailed weekly reports to my boss via email to keep him updated. And I wasn't getting feedback. I wasn't getting feedback on the report that I was sending him. You know, just a response. Maybe I have a question here or something like that, something to get some feedback from him. And I was a little bit frustrated. And then I tried something where I color-coded the new stuff, because these emails were really long. So I highlighted the new stuff, the important stuff that I wanted the boss to be able to focus on quickly. And what happened then was I started getting replies from the boss. And I kind of realized that, you know, the boss is kind of busy, and I'm sending this report that's way too long because it's got a lot of background material in it, which is fine if he got interested in a particular aspect of the update. The information would be there, right? But I sure wasn't making it easy for the boss with this big long thing. So when I color-coded it, the boss started replying. And I learned that, you know, be a little respectful of the boss's time. He's got a lot more people than me working for him. What if everybody was sending him this report with no color coding? So make it easier for the boss to give you the feedback you want. So that's kind of what I learned is, appreciate his time. He's got a lot of stuff going on. My job is to give him information, but give him the information in an easy to read, easy to see, easy to understand manner so he can get through it quickly. Give me some feedback, and that's what started happening for me. So I really learned a lot about appreciating the boss's perspective and treating him with a little bit more respect and being more respectful of his time. Okay, so that's my disagreement with the boss story. Do you hear the word disagreement in there? No. Was it some massive conflict? No. What was it? It was me learning something, appreciating the boss's perspective, and then getting what I needed back out of that when I was able to figure out I needed to do something different. I needed to do something a little bit different, and appreciating the boss's perspective was a big part of that. Okay, so here's your gouge sheet. Okay, just to review, it's not a conflict question. Okay, so stay away from telling any kind of story that had conflict in it. Okay, it's not about you being right. Okay, that's really not important in this question at all. Okay, do not throw the boss under the bus under any circumstances. Loyalty is part of this. Are you going to be loyal? Are you loyal to the organization, or are you just going to trash us to anybody that wants to hear anything? And you tell a good positive story. The boss is not a bad person. Okay, you learned something and you understand the boss's perspective. Okay, if you get all of that into this answer, I like to say that's the PhD level response to this. And remember, it doesn't say, tell us about a time you had a disagreement with your boss when you were right and they were wrong. Okay, you can be wrong and it not be a bad answer to the question. You had a good boss. I wanted to do it this way, and the boss did not want to do it that way. And then I saw how things played out as we did this, and I realized, based on their experience, they kind of had anticipated some things that I hadn't, and I saw how their plan was better. So I realized a few tricks of the trade there that I didn't know. Something like that, you refine that a little bit more specifically for your situation, is a good answer, is a really good answer. Okay? All right, thank you. God bless.